Joining us now, Matthew Horace, CNN law enforcement analyst. When you look at this and you look at the way this event unfolded, what is your first thought?
My first thought, it was very chaotic. There were a lot of people on that scene. Police arrived on the scene and they had to make a decision. In fact, this situation reminds me somewhat of what happened at Ohio State University several weeks ago. One suspect with a knife. Law enforcement officers, we are taught to take edge weapon attacks as serious as gun attacks. So
what you're saying, as an officer, when you arrive on scene, if you see a knife,
yes,
that should be considered just as deadly, just as dangerous as a gun? Because that's something that I honestly didn't know until you were telling me that earlier today.
I think if you talk to a lot of law enforcement officers, if we had to make our choice, we'll take that bullet before we take a knife, cutting or severing a vein or an artery or something like that any day of the week. And you don't know the extent to what the expertise the person has with that knife. And if you don't have that gun drawn and they're not ready to engage, you can be hurt or killed.
We know there is a lot of criticism these days for the way law enforcement handles things,
sure,
justified or not. And there have been postings on social media. Now, there's a Facebook post from a man who identifies himself as the boy's father. We haven't been able to confirm that, but he asks the question why the officer pulled his sidearm and not his taser. So two things here. We have not been able to confirm this officer had a taser,
sure,
and I don't know if you can tell by looking at that video. If he did, is protocol that you go with the taser first in a situation like this? Does the age have anything to do with it?
Well, intermediate levels of force are there for a reason, so that we can make that decision to choose level of force to apply in a different situation. A situation like that, a knife-wielding young adult or adult, it really doesn't matter, he had the potential to hurt or kill other people, including the officer. The officer should have given commands. If the commands weren't complied with, this is a good shoot any day of the week.
You brought up Ohio State, which happened not too long ago, and the officer arrived on scene there, saw someone with a knife who had been attacking people at that point, and shot him. That man, hailed as a hero,
yes,
that police officer, there's a slightly different reaction that we're seeing. And yet you don't see a lot of difference between the two events, right?
No. As a 28-year law enforcement veteran, I see no different in these events other than the age of the suspect. But remember, and as we've discussed before, when incidents go from bad to worse, we, law enforcement officers, do not see the age of the suspect or the gender. What we see is a threat. And in this case, that officer addressed that threat appropriately, in my view.
So, and we should say that, as we just heard from the police department, they're supporting the officer's actions in this. Does it go any further here, do you think, or is this the end of it?
No, they'll investigate it just like any other department would. They'll determine what his feeling was when he saw that threat. He will say, as most officers would, I felt a concern for my life and for others' lives. And if you see the way the suspect was reacting here, it was erratic. You know, there was no cohesion. It was very, very difficult to assess what was going to happen next. He stopped the threat. The suspect is not dead. The threat was mitigated, and we're going to move on.
Matthew Horace, always appreciate your perspective. Thank you.
Have a great day.